Good morning, everyone. In the previous classes, we discussed how to develop a REST API and how to develop REST client, what is REST template, what is web client, how do we handle exceptions in the REST API, how to work with XML data in the REST API, what is consumes and produces, what is accept header, and what is content type header. That part we discussed in the last session. And here in the Spring Boot, there is another concept available, which is called Spring Data REST concept is available. Spring Data REST is very advanced concept which is used to expose our entity classes as REST controllers. As of now, we are using, if you want to develop any REST API, what is the process we are going to follow, guys? If you want to develop any REST API, we are going to create one REST controller class. We'll create one REST controller class. Then we will create one service class. Then we will create one repository interface in order to communicate with the database. And here one entity class also will be available. One entity class also will be available. This is repository. This repository is going to communicate with a database table. Repository providing several methods to perform operations with the database. Predefined methods available. Now, here we are having service. Inside the service, we are writing a business logic. And here we are going to create REST controller. What is the purpose of this REST controller? REST controller is used to expose our methods for the third-party application. If you want to expose our services over the web, then we are going to use REST controller. CAD operations, any business logic that we want to write, that logic we are going to write inside the service class. Service class will talk to repository. Repository will talk to database, right? This is regular approach we are going to follow in order to develop a REST API. Suppose if your REST API is only responsible to perform CRUD operations, I mean to say inserting the records, update the record, delete the record, retrieve the record. That is very common in all the projects. That is very common in all the projects. In order to perform such kind of CRUD operations, we no need to write the REST controller. We no need to write the service. If you have some specific business logic, then you can create REST controllers and service. But what this Spring Boot people has done is CRUD operations are very common for every project. So if you want to perform CRUD operations by using REST API, you no need to write any business logic also. You just use a concept called Spring Data REST concept. If you use Spring Data REST concept, this Spring Data REST is going to use our repository. It will expose our repository as a REST API. So we no need to create the REST controllers. We no need to create any service class. You no need to write any business logic also. Whatever repository that we are creating, we are going to make that repository as a REST repository. What is that, guys? It is a REST repository. When we make our repository as a REST repository, this REST controller and service is not required. Our repository will be exposed as a REST API. That is called Spring Data REST concept. Now, let us create one simple project to understand how Spring Data REST is going to work. If you use this Spring Data REST concept, developing the REST APIs will become very easy because we are exposing our repository as a REST controller. By using this, we can perform all the CRUD operations. So let me go to IDE. Let me create one project. At the time of creating the project, earlier what we used? Earlier we used web starter and Webflux starter. If you want to create a REST API by using Spring Data REST concept, Spring Data REST dependency we have to use. It's a new dependency that we need to add in our project. So let me get that. Somewhere I have added that. Spring Data REST. This is the dependency that we need to add, guys. Spring Data REST concept. What is this Spring Data REST? It is used to simplify our REST API development. We no need to create REST controllers to perform CRUD operations with the DB table when we use Spring Data REST. You no need to create the REST controller. To use this Spring Data REST concept, we need to add below dependency in the pom.xml. So let's go to our IDE. Let me create a project, file new, Spring Starter project. So let me give this one, Spring Data REST concept. Click on next. Yeah, here DevTools, let us select Spring Data REST dependency. Spring Data Redis, Spring Data REST. Yeah, what is the dependency we have here? REST repositories. Can you please read this one? What is the meaning of REST repositories? Exposing Spring Data repositories over REST via Spring Data REST. So if you want to use Spring Data REST concept, we need to select a dependency called REST repositories concept. Click on next, then click on finish. Now, Spring Data REST is available. So we are going to create one entity class and we are going to add REST repository. Sorry, we need to add data JPA. It is not required. 1 minute. It is creating the project. Project is created. Go to pom.xml. So if you see, we have added data REST dependency, DevTools available. Then let's try to start the project once. Refresh, run as boot application. Yeah, server is already in use 8080. Let us change the port number. Server.port 9090. Update this Maven project. Run as boot application. Yes, our application started with the port number 9090. Okay, now I'm going to create one simple entity class here. New class entity. Table mapping. Some book class I'm creating. So here book entity table we are going to use. Data is not there. we need to write the setters and getters. @entity, @table. These annotations are not coming. Why we are not getting entity annotation? JPA is
API.
not added. Let us add that JPA dependency also. Spring Boot starter data JPA dependency we are adding. So once we add JPA dependency, we will be getting this entity and table annotations. Spring Boot starter data JPA. Let us do the map and update. Refresh, map and update the project. No. Yeah. Table annotation we are getting and entity annotations we are getting. Perfect. Let us generate setters and getters for these variables. Perfect. So setters and getters available. Let us create one repository for this entity class, book repository. This is extending from JPA repository. Book ID primary key, which is integer type. So this is how we will write our normal repository. But do you want to use normal repository or we want to use the REST repository? We want to use a REST repository. Why we want to use that REST repository? Because we want to expose our repository as a REST API. So for this, we need MySQL dependency. We want to communicate with the MySQL database, MySQL starter, MySQL connector I have added, and MySQL database properties also we are going to add in our properties file. Yes, with this, my application will connect with MySQL database. Let's open our database. MySQL Workbench. Use SBMS 36. Use the database, show the tables. Yeah. So currently we have book table. Now we are making the table name as select star from book underscore table. So currently we don't have any table with a name called book underscore table. Remove all these things. Yeah. So I'm using this database, show tables. Book is available, but our table name itself is book underscore table. Currently with this name, table is not available in the database. Okay. Now go to the project. So here we are configuring SBMS 36 database. Then let us try to run our application. Refresh. This is our application. Close unrelated projects. Run as boot application. It will run on the port number 9090 and it will connect with the MySQL database. We are getting some exception, error creating the bean. Entity book has no identifier. Entity class must declare at least one ID. Primary key is mandatory for the entity class. ID is available, but this is wrong ID. ID annotation. We need to use persistence related ID. Then only this will be considered as a primary key. Okay. Then rerun the project. Run these import statements, guys. I have seen multiple people also doing the same mistake with the import statement. If you don't use correct import statement, our project cannot be started. So we need to make sure our entity class annotations are coming from Jakarta package, jakarta.persistence.entity ID table. These three are from Jakarta persistence package. Then run as boot application. Yes, our table got created. Now go to database and check it. Select start from book table. So in this table, currently records are not available. ID, name, price. Now I want to insert a record in the table. To insert the record in the table, earlier we used to create like this. We used to create a service class, entity and repository available. We use it to create a service class. We use it to create a REST controller. Now, I don't want to create that REST controller. Whatever the repository is available, I want to expose this repository as a REST repository. To expose this as a REST repository, go to our repository interface. Here, earlier, we will write normal @repository annotation. What is the meaning of @repository? Database component. Any class or any interface which is responsible to communicate with the database, that is called as a repository. It is a stereotype annotation. Now, I want to expose this repository as a REST controller. To expose the repository as a REST controller, we are going to use a annotation called @REST repository. Repository REST controller. What is the annotation? So here, repository REST resource is the annotation that we are going to use. Repository REST resource. Repository REST resource. Now, we are going to specify the path of that. The path is equal to /books. The path is equal to /books. Now, I'm going to specify path is equal to /books here. With this annotation, this repository will become a REST controller. You no need to write a separate REST controller to perform the CRUD operations. That is the power of Spring Data REST concept. The main purpose of this Spring Data REST to simplify REST API development, especially when you want to perform only CRUD operations, no business logic. If you want to perform only CRUD operations, then you can go for this repository REST resource concept. Okay. Now let us take this REST API and let us perform some operations. So here path is equal to books. I have given /. This is also not required. Path is equal to books. Stop this and refresh. Run as boot application. What are the variables available? ID, name, and price is available. Clear the console. Open Postman. Go to Postman. Let us make a request. Check it once again. Did I create any REST controller in this project? No. I created boot application. I created one entity class, which is used for table mapping. And I created one repository interface. In this repository interface, I have used one special annotation, which is called repository REST resource. Now go to Postman, localhost :8080 / what is the path I have given for that? Books I have given. The path is equal to books. Now, if I send get request with the /books, when I send that get request with the /books, now you see what is the response we are getting from 9090. Sorry. This is 9090 /books. Click on send. When I send that request for the /books, am I getting any books data here? Currently, I am not getting any books. Why we are not getting any books? Because in the database, the data is not available. Can we insert one book now? To insert one book, let us send post request with a body, ID, name, and what is the other variable? Price is available. Type of the ID is integer. So ID I'm giving as 101. Name, book name, let me give this name as Java. Price is a double value, so let me give some number. Okay, 1200 I'm giving as a price. And say post request. What is the meaning of a post request? What is the meaning of post request? Post request is used to insert the record. Post is used to insert the record. Now, before sending the post request, check in the database. Select start from table. Any record available in the table now? No. Record is not available in the table. Post request 9090/books. ID, name, and price. Click on send. Now, I send that request. What is the status code I am getting? 201. Who is sending this status code? Is it our logic or is it data REST logic? We have not created any REST controller. Our logic is not available here. We just created a repository. For that repository, we added one annotation called REST repository annotation. That's it. Now go to database, select star from table. Can you check this one? Record is inserted or not inserted. So what is the difference between today's application and last week application? What is the difference between today's application and the last week application? In the last week, we used it to create the REST controllers. We used it to create the methods. We used it to map them with get mapping, post mapping, put mapping, delete mapping. We need to take a response entity. We need to send the status code, whatever we want. But today, nothing is there. Just we created one repository. For that repository, we have given one annotation called repository REST resource annotation. What is the meaning of repository REST resource annotation? What is the meaning of repository REST resource annotation? It is used to expose. It is used to expose our repository as a REST controller. So you can create normal REST controller. If you don't want to create normal REST controller, you can expose your repository itself as a REST controller by using a concept called Spring Data REST concept. Now, one record is inserted. Let me insert one more record. Go to Postman, post request 102 AWS. Price, let me make it as 1300. Click on send. Now, AWS record is also inserted. 201 record is created. Go to database, start from table. Now, 101 and 102 records are available. Now, so post request is used to insert the record. Now I want to get the records. Send get request. Click on get request /books URL. Click on send. Now you check it. Are we able to get the record? This is a first book record and this is second book record. Sir, earlier we got only JSON data directly, but now along with the JSON data, some links also coming. These links are called as hypermedia. Whatever the data that is available in the REST API, that the data is coming as a JSON array. In that data, some links also coming. These links are called as heteros concept. In the REST API, this links concept is called as heteros. So what is a heteros in the REST API? Heteros nothing but exposing our data as a hyperlink. Exposing the data as a hyperlink is called as a heteros concept. When you search for something in the Google, so if you go to Google and if you search Java interview questions, now are we getting the data or we are getting the data as a hyperlink? Are we getting the data directly or we are getting the data as a hyperlink? We are getting data as a hyperlink. So this concept is called as heteros concept. Heteros nothing but exposing REST API data as a hyperlinks. That is called heteros. When you go for Spring Data REST concept, that is going to expose our REST API data as a hyperlink, which is called heteros. Let us see what is the full form of heteros. Heteros REST API. Click on this heteros. Can you read this one? What is heteros? Hypermedia as the engine of application state. Hypermedia as the engine for application state is a constraint of the REST application architecture that distinguish it from other network application architectures. With a heteros, a client interact with the network application whose application server provide information dynamically through hypermedia. So whatever the data that server is providing to the client, provider sending data to the consumer, provider will send the data to the consumer through hyperlink. That concept is called heteros concept. Do we need to do anything to work with the heteros in the data rest? Not required. Directly Spring Data REST is taking care of this heteros principle. Now you observe. Go to the postman. I'm sending a GET request with a localhost colon 9090/books URL is available. Click on send. Am I getting only data? I'm getting data in the hyperlink format. I'm getting the data in the hyperlink format. If you observe, what is this hyperlink? This hyperlink will tell you there are two records available in the database. One is a Java record, another one is AWS record. Check in the database. Now select star from table. Here we have here we are having one Java record and we are having one AWS record. Okay. So if you want to access only AWS record, they are telling that this is the hyperlink for that. Books/102. So currently I'm sending a request 9090/books only. When I send a request with /books, I'm getting all the books which are available in the database. Suppose if you want to get any book by using its ID, then this is the URL for that record. So they are giving the information in the hypermedia format, in the hyperlink format. That concept is called heteros. So what is the full form for the heteros? Hypermedia as the engine of application state. Heteros nothing but hypermedia as the engine of application state. So what is the main purpose of this heteros? It is used to expose REST API data as a hyperlinks. Expose REST API data as hyperlinks by using Spring Data REST concept. Perfect. Now, so we are able to send post request and get request. Post request is used to insert the record. Now, when I'm sending get request, it is giving all the records. Now, I want to get a particular record by using ID. How do we send ID to the REST API? As a path parameter. Okay. How do we send path parameter? //ID. How to read the path parameter? Request param annotation. If you create the REST controller, you need to read the path parameter. But in our application, REST controller is available. REST controller is not available. In our application, REST controller not available. But still, let me send a GET request with the /books/101. Okay. 101 is the ID which is belongs to Java record. In our database, 101 is the ID which is belongs to Java record. Let's go to Postman /books/101. Click on send. Now, am I able to get the Java record? Only data is coming, hyperlinks also coming. Hyperlinks also coming, which is nothing but heteros. Heteros is applied for our REST repository. If I want to get 102 record, what I need to do? /102. 101 is belongs to Java. 102 is belongs to AWS record. I'm able to get that. Now, I want to delete AWS record from the database. I want to delete AWS record from the database. How do we delete that? Get or delete. Delete request /books/102. So which record that you want to delete? Which record that you want to delete? That record ID we are sending as a path parameter. Now, so delete request with 102. Click on send. Now 200. Okay. Go to database. Select a star from table. Record deleted or not? Yes, record is deleted. Is there any logic from our side? Are we writing any logic to delete the record, insert the record, retrieve the record? No, we are not doing anything. Similarly, I want to update the record. I want to update the record. How do we update the record? What is the request we need to send? put request. Which record? Java record. ID 101 is available. So name is Java only. Price is 1200, some 20 something is available. Go to the database, check this one, select the star from table, 101 Java, 1200 is the price. I want to update the price from 1200 to 1400. I want to update the price from 1200 to 1400. Now put request we are sending. Okay, remove that path parameter. I'm not sending anything in the path parameter. Just I'm sending put request / books URL, ID, name and price. Click on send. When I send it, what happened? What it is saying, guys? We are getting 404. What is the meaning of 404? Resource is not available. Boss, whatever the URL that we are trying to access, that URL is not available. Whatever the URL that you are trying to access, that URL is not available. Why? Because when you are sending put request to update the record, you need to send data in the body. You need to send the data in the body and you need to send ID as a path parameter, which record you want to update. So currently we are sending data in the body, but REST API is expecting record ID as a path parameter. It is expecting record ID as a path parameter. Now /books /101. My record ID is 101. I'm trying to update that record. So now click on send. Now this time what happened? 200. Okay. So if you want to delete the record, if you want to update the record, that ID should be sent in the path parameter. So earlier, same put request I sent without ID, we got 404. Now same put request I have sent with the ID 101 in the path parameter. I got the success response. Go to database. Current price is 1200. Refresh. The price is updated to 1400 in the database. So we are able to perform all CRUD operations, inserting the record, update the record, retrieve the record, and delete the record by using REST repository concept. No need to create REST controller also. If you have a business logic, I want to book the ticket, I want to check the ticket information. Okay. If I want to send some amount, I want to deduct some amount, I want to do some calculations, some manipulations with the data, then you need to create your own REST controller. If you want to perform basic CRUD operations, then creating the REST controller is not required. You need to use a simple data REST concept. So here we have seen total 3 types of dependencies. One is web starter dependency, one is reactive web dependency, one is REST repositories. So total there are 3 types of dependencies are available. One is called web starter, second one is called reactive web, third one is called REST repository. Okay, reactive web dependency is also called as web flux dependency. Web flux dependency. REST repository is also called as data REST dependency. Okay, when to go for web starter? When to go for web starter, guys? When to go for web starter? If you want to create basic REST controller and REST template, if you want to go for basic REST controllers and if you want to use REST template, then you can go for web starter dependency. Suppose when you will go for web flux dependency, if you want to work with a web client, if you want to work with web client, then you will use reactive web starter. Reactive web starter is nothing but web flux starter. Okay. The next one is REST repositories. When to go for REST repositories? Exposing repository itself as a REST controller. If you want to expose your repository itself as a REST controller, then you can go for REST repositories concept. REST repository is nothing but data REST dependency. So that is what we developed today. So we created one project. Let me give the steps what we have done today. So first step, what we have done, create Spring Starter project with below dependencies. What are the dependencies we have added? One is REST repositories, then JPA starter, data JPA. Third one is MySQL connector. Then we used some DevTools concept. Okay, REST repository is nothing but data REST. This we can call it as data REST dependency. Then data JPA. What is data JPA? To communicate with the database. It can be a MySQL or it can be H2 or Oracle. To communicate with the database, we are using data JPA starter. MySQL connector-j to connect with the MySQL database. If you want to use the H2, you configure H2 dependency. DevTools to restart the server. Once it is done, second step, configure data source properties. In properties file or YML file, you can use application.properties or you can use application.yml to configure our data source properties. Then create entity class for table mapping. With which table you want to communicate. Then for that table, you need to create one entity class. Here I have created book entity. Simple. Book entity class I have created. Create entity class. Create entity class for table mapping. We created a class with a name called book. Then the most important part in this application, create REST repository. It's not a normal JPA repository, guys. Create REST repository to expose REST API methods. Create REST repository to expose REST API methods. This is our REST repository. This is the new annotation we are using. @repository REST resource concept is available. What is this path? URL pattern. You can give anything as a URL pattern. Suppose if I give URL pattern as a V1, that's it. So you can access everything with the V1. Get V1, put V1, post V1, delete V1, like that you can give any URL pattern. So now here I'm giving the path as books. So that means in the Postman, everything we are going to access by using /books. Now get /books. What is the meaning of get /books? It is going to retrieve all the records available in the database table. How it will understand from which table it has to get the data? This request. When I send get request with the /books, request will go to which class? Who will receive our request? Any REST controller available? No. Who will handle our request now? Repository will handle our request. Okay. So when I send get request with the /books, so in our application, REST controller is not available to handle the request. There is no REST controller to handle the request. Then who is going to receive our request? Our request will be received by our REST repository. So it is not just a repository. It is repository plus REST controller, which is called REST repository. So the earlier we have seen JPA repository, which is only responsible to communicate with the database. Then after we have seen only REST controller. What is the responsibility of only REST controller? To handle the request, take the request and give the response. So what we have done earlier we created repository separately and REST controller separately. Repository is a JPA repository which is responsible to communicate with the database. Earlier we developed our REST API with this architecture. Repository only responsible to communicate with the database. REST controller only responsible to take the request and give the response. Are you guys able to follow me? Now here I don't want to create them separately. So REST controller plus repository, if you combine, what is the result? If you combine, what is the result we are getting? That is called REST repository. Okay. If you combine REST controller and repository, then we are getting REST repository concept. What is the meaning of now? Three things. What is REST controller? What is repository? What is REST repository? What is REST controller? What is REST controller, guys? REST controller is used to handle B2B request. REST controller is responsible to handle B2B request. What is the meaning of B2B? It will take the request and it will give the response. Take the request and give the response. What is repository? Perform CRUD operations with the database. Perform CRUD operations with the database. Then what is REST repository? Take the request, communicate with the database. It will handle B2B request and it will communicate with the database also. Instead of creating two components, we can create only one component to handle B2B request and to communicate with the database. That concept is called as REST repository concept. If you want to use this REST repository concept, if you want to use this REST repository concept, what dependency we need to use in the project? We need to use a concept called REST repositories concept. What is the annotation we are adding for that? Repository REST resource annotation we are adding. So we are able to get the data, put the data, post the data, and delete the data as well. Now, for example, if I want to search the data, if I want to perform some custom operation, I want to perform some custom operation, find by name. So now we are able to get the data only by using primary key. Suppose if I want to get the data by using non-primary key, find by methods are available, custom queries are available. Can we write that custom query also? Yes, we can write that custom queries also. In our JPA repository, we can write our custom queries also. Find by name containing something, list of books. So I want to get the records. Find by name, something like this. You can give like this also. Find by name. With that name, how many records are available? I want to get all those records. How to access this method now? Earlier, what we have accessed? Earlier, we have accessed only books. Earlier, we accessed only books. Now, run this application, refresh, right click, run as boot app. Clear the console. Okay, go to Postman, get /books. Now let me go for post request once again. Let me insert one record, body 102. It is AWS 1200. Okay, now 103 DevOps 1500, something like this. Send that. Now get all books. So total, how many records available? Java is available, AWS is available, DevOps is available. Go to database, select star from table name. Okay, 101, 102, 103. Okay, so total there are 3 records available. Now, I want to retrieve all the records. If I want to retrieve all the records, what is the URL we are sending? Localhost : that is our URL pattern. http / localhost : 9090/books. Okay, get request. When I send this get request with this URL, what is happening? Let me write this one once. Run the application and test it using Postman. Okay, so now get 9090/books available. What is the meaning of this? Which is going to get all the records. Suppose if I send get request http://localhost:/9090/books/101. What is the meaning of that? Based on the ID, we are getting that record. Suppose if you send delete request http://localhost:/9090/books/101, what will happen? It is used to delete the record. So if you send get request, we are getting the record. If you send delete request, it is going to delete the record. But now I have created one custom method. Which is find by name. Now I want to access this method. I want to retrieve the record by using ID. ID is a primary key. Directly you can send as a path parameter. Now if I want to access this method through Postman, how can we do that? So here we are trying to search that record. Find by name containing. So let us try to access /books. What is the method name we have given? Find by name / I'm giving the name as Java. Click on send that. What we are getting now? 404. So if I keep that method name in the URL, is it accepting that? No, it is not accepting that. Still 404. /books find by name param. What is this param? Correct. So whatever the name that it is expecting, that let me remove this search also. Correct. So this is the URL that we need to use to access get request. Yeah. http://localhost:/9090/books. What is this keyword? Search key. That means if you want to call user defined methods available in the REST repository, we need to use a keyword called search keyword. What is this one? Our method name. @name is equal to Java. This is a query parameter we are passing to this method, which is used for searching the data. So you can use predefined methods. If you want, you can write your own method also to perform your REST operation. Now, if you don't write this method, basic CRUD operations you can perform. Post, put, delete, get, you can perform with the primary key. If you want to work with some non-primary key data, then you can write one custom method in the JPA REST repository. So how do we call this custom method from our Postman? Search /method name parameter. What is the parameter it is expecting? Name it is expecting. So name is the key, Java is the value. How we are sending? Java as a value. Search /method name parameter name is equal to value. So when I send a get request with this URL, what will happen? It will provide the records which are having name as Java. Okay. So similarly, you can send post request also. You can send a post request also. Post/books. So what we need to send in the post request? JSON data. So what is the meaning of a post request? Post request is used to insert the record in the table. So to insert the record in the table, we need to send JSON data. To insert the record in the table, we need to send JSON data. So what is that JSON data we are sending? ID, name, and price we are sending. So if you want to send post request, this is the data that we need to send. Suppose if I want to send a put request, if I want to send put request, then what I need to do? Slash ID. Now price earlier 1500. Now price I am making as 2500. So if I send this request, what will happen? It is going to insert the record in the table. If I send this request, update. Is it mandatory to send this ID? Yes. If I don't send this ID, 404, 404. What is the meaning of 404? Resource not found. Resource not found. That is invalid URL. Okay, good. Then next we are sending a get request with a slash books. What is the meaning of get request with a slash books? What is the meaning of get request with a slash books? I'm going to get all the records which are available in the table. Get request with the ID. I'm going to get that particular record. Okay. Then what is the meaning of this get request? I want to execute user-defined method. I want to execute user-defined method which is available in the JPA repository. What is the purpose of this method? Which is used to delete the record. Which is used to delete the record. Perfect. So you understand what is REST repository? Guys, do you understand what is REST repository? Yes. What is REST repository? What is Spring Data REST? What is Spring Data REST, guys? It is used to simplify REST API development. Okay. So earlier we have REST controller plus JPA repository is equal to REST repository. Okay, fine. So it is used to simplify REST API development. REST controller plus JPA repository is equal to REST repository. Creating the project. This is the important dependency we need to add. The remaining things already we know. Configuring the data source, creating the entity, creating the REST repository, REST resource. This is the new annotation we have added. Then we are not doing anything else. Just we are creating the repository. We are running our application and we are testing by using Postman. This is post request method. This is put request method. Getter with all the records, with a particular record, with a custom query. And this is delete record, which is going to delete the record available in the database. Spring Data REST concept. The main purpose of Spring Data REST to simplify REST API development to perform CRUD operation. Earlier, separate REST controller, separate repository available. Now both we can combine and we can create one REST repository. Fine. And do you see any problem in this approach? If we develop a project like this, do you see any problem? Yes, security issue. Even though we are not writing any logic, people can delete our records. People can update our records. Yes or no? If I am developing my REST API like this, my intention, I should only insert the data, retrieve the data. I should not update the data. I should not delete the data. But do we have any control on this? Do we have any control on this? No. Why we don't have any control? Data JPA and the REST API both are integrated as a REST repository. Security is the issue. Because if we give our URL, by mistake people send a delete request, our record will be deleted. There is no logic to handle that. So we don't have any logic to handle. By mistake, if somebody send put request, data will be updated in the database. By mistake, if somebody send delete request, data will be deleted in the database table. That delete also permanent delete. The record will be deleted permanently from the database. So security is the problem when you go for Spring Data REST concept. Now, in my project, I don't want to perform update operation and delete operation by using REST API. My REST API should accept only GET request, POST request, but not PUT request and delete request. Are you getting my point? So to handle this security issue, we need to create some custom configuration. What is that custom configuration? We need to disable PUT request and delete request. In our REST API. I have developed a REST API. We have tested. All the 4 things are working. Get, post, put, delete. All 4 things are working. But my project is having special requirement. I should not accept put request and delete request from the consumer. I should not delete the data. I should not update the data. How do we control that? This is an interview question. So they will ask in the interview, do you have any idea on Spring Data REST concept? So what is the Spring Data REST? Spring Data REST is used to expose JPA repository as a REST controller. We are exposing our JPA repository as a REST controller by using Spring Data REST. When you expose JPA repository as a REST controller, it will accept all the requests. Get, post, put, delete, all the requests will be accepted. But due to security constraints, I want to disable put request and delete request. How do you do that? I want to disable put request and delete request. How do you do that? Okay. For that, we need to create one custom configuration class like this, guys. 1 minute. Where is that? Yeah. So this is one custom configuration class we are going to create. How do we create this custom configuration class? Repository REST configurer. What is that class name? What is interface? There is an interface. What is that interface available? Repository REST configurer interface is available. Inside that, we need to override one method and we need to disable the request that you don't want. What request you don't want to allow? I want to disable put request and delete request in my project. Let's try this. Let me create one new Java class. New class. What is the name I have used? My data REST config. Okay, finish that. Now, so here, this class is going to implement one interface, which is REST repository configurer. Okay, public class, my data REST config implements repository REST configurer. What is the purpose of this configuration, guys? What is the purpose of this class? Why we are creating this class? What is the use of this class? We want to disable few HTTP methods from the REST repository. Suppose if you go for a normal REST controller, whatever the methods you want, those methods only you can write it. I want only get method. I want only post method. I will write only 2 methods in my REST controller. But here, are we writing those methods or we are not writing those methods? We are not writing. By default, every method is coming. By default, every method is coming. Due to security, I don't want few methods. So I need to disable it. Are you getting the concept? If you create our own REST controller, do we have this problem? If I create my own REST controller, do I have this problem or I don't have this problem? I don't have this problem. Why? Whatever methods I want, only those methods I will write it, right? I don't have this problem. But if I go to REST repository, the methods which I don't want also coming. I want only get and post, but by default they are giving get, post, delete, put also. But I don't want to put and delete. When I don't want those two methods, I need to disable them. In order to disable them, we need to customize our configuration. How do we customize configuration? By implementing repository REST configurer annotation. Implementation we are doing. So what is the logic available? Let me take this. We need to override one method. We need to override that method. Okay. So import our entity class. Okay, good. Configure repository REST configuration. This methods here. If you want post also, you can disable. Suppose I want only get data. I want to only get the data. I don't want to allow them insert, update, delete. Can I disable post also? Yes, you can disable post also. But currently I'm disabling only put methods and delete method. So configuration I'm taking here REST repository REST configuration dot expose configuration. For which entity you want to disable these operations? We have book entity in our project, which is mapped to the database table. For book entity, I want to disable put methods and these delete methods. With the item exposure, disable unsupported methods. With the collection exposure, disable these methods. That means, so single record, group of records, both I want to disable. Updating single record, updating multiple records. With the item nothing but one record. With the collection means group of records. Single record update, group records update I want to disable. Single record delete, group records delete also I want to disable. Now with this configuration, put method and delete method should not work for REST repository. Can we test it now? Earlier we are able to update, we are able to delete also. Now I am telling to data repository to disable put method and delete method. Let's try this. Stop this application. Refresh. Right click, run as boot application. Yes, application started. Tomcat is using port number 9090. Clear the console. Good here. First, let me send a GET request to see the data is coming or not. Click on send GET request with the /books. So what happened? Am I able to get the records? Java is coming, AWS is coming, DevOps also coming. I'm able to get the record. Can I send one post request? See that table. There are 3 records available now. Java, AWS, DevOps available. Let me insert 104 record with the Python. Python just 500. Click on send. Am I able to send post request? Yes. 201 record is created. Go to database. So that means get is working, post also working. We have not disturbed get request and post request. In our customization, I have disabled only put request and delete request. Let's try sending a delete request. Click on delete /books Python record 104. Go to database, check this, select star from table 101, 102, 103, 104. Total 4 records available. I'm trying to send a delete request with a 104 as a ID. Click on send. When I send delete, what is the status code we are getting? 404 or 405? 405. What is the meaning of 405? Method that means, boss, you cannot send delete request for this application. You cannot send delete request for this application. Post request I'm able to send, record is inserted. Get request I'm able to send, data is retrieved. But when I try to send a delete request with 104, it is saying method not allowed. Now, can anyone delete the record in our application? It's not possible. Our application will not accept the delete request. Can we try put also? Yes, go to put request, 104. Price is 500. Let's make it as a 600. I want to update the Python record price from 500 to 600. Click on send. What it is saying now? What it is saying now? So post, get working, put, delete not working. Why they are not working? That is the configuration we have done. Can I delete? Can I disable multiple requests also? Can I disable post also? How can we just you need to add to this array? Which methods that you want to disable? All those methods you can add here. With a domain book entity is available. For the book entity, I don't want to allow put operation. I don't want to allow delete operation. Are you clear? Good. How to disable HTTP requests in data REST application? This is very important question, guys. When you develop your project by using data REST, security problems will come. Unnecessarily put and delete also will be exposed. Add below class in data REST application to disable put and delete methods. Okay, so with this, with below configuration, our API will not accept put and delete methods. So this is used to resolve security problems. So when we are working with the data REST, it is exposing our REST API repositories. It is exposing our repository as a REST API. Get, post, put, delete, all methods will be exposed. So if you want to disable few methods like post, put, delete, then you need to create one class like this in your project. This is the class. With this class, we can disable them. Got it? Good. Anybody not able to understand data REST concept? What is Spring Data REST? What is Spring Data REST, guys? It is used to simplify. It is used to simplify REST API development. So the basic agenda, combining REST controller plus repository as a single component. Earlier we created separate REST controller, separate repository. Now repository itself can act as a REST controller. That is called repository REST to resource concept. Now by default, all the HTTP methods will be exposed. If you want to disable any particular method, I have given some configuration class also. So please do the practice regarding this data REST today. Okay. So one more concept that we need to discuss, how to send asynchronous request by using web client. So I want you people to do some research on web client also. We discussed already how to send synchronous request by using web client. We still need to implement how to send asynchronous request by using web client. That is assignment for you. How to send async request using web client. How to send asynchronous request using web client. Okay, so I want you to do some research on this one, how to send asynchronous request by using web client. Already we discussed how to send synchronous request. We need to implement how to send asynchronous request. Once this asynchronous request concept is completed, then we are good with REST API. We will start with microservices concepts, guys. Okay, so to learn microservices, it is going to take another 20 to 25 days of time. So we got lot of holidays due to Pongal, and even my brain is also not working from last 2 days. So we'll focus more from the next week onwards, and we'll try to complete the microservices in another 20 to 25 days of time. One concept is pending from the REST API, asynchronous request by using web client. You try to do that analysis. Tomorrow I will explain the topic. Then after we'll start with our microservices topics. Good. Online students able to follow me? Let me update the notes. Guys, did you work on the analysis of the mini project, second mini project? Yeah, today we have that class also offline. From today, regular classes will be there. Yeah, we'll wait for another 1 week, guys. If we get any positive response from YouTube, our channel will come back. Otherwise, we need to create the new channel. But it's almost from 5 years I worked on the channel. Around 1,000 videos I have uploaded, and we have 70,000 plus subscribers in that channel. Now we need to start from the zero again. Good. Channel is not recovered, sir. Yesterday night I did not get sleep also. Good. Thank you, guys. We'll meet again in the tomorrow session. Thank you, all of you. We'll meet in the tomorrow's class.